Okay, then we will start our next program by Usman. The title is Docker-Grafana, Best Practices for Easy Deployments.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. I hope that everyone can hear me correctly or clearly. So this session is about understanding Docker-Grafana best practices for easy deployments. A little about me. My name is Usman Ahmad, and I work at Grafana Labs as a senior developer advocate, which means basically I work with the open source community users, trying to help them fix the documentation, create video content, or write tutorials, something like that, and also present in conferences to give awareness about Grafana and its other products, which are on open source landscape. And in my previous role, basically I work in my previous role as Linux system admin, then slowly moved to cloud support, worked overall 15 years or so. That's my professional experience. But beside work, I'm arrived here in Tokyo from Germany, very first time, and excited to be here. And also, I have a small family, so when I'm not working, I'm mostly with my daughter and father time. But beside that, also I like traveling or cooking or eating mostly. Yeah, and other than this, as a hobby, also I like to create videos on some interesting open source tools or things which I learn and just want to share, especially what I learned from Linux. And also write technical articles when I am more free time. I love writing. So you can find more about me if you scan this QR code or just visit my GitHub URL. And I will get started with today's agenda. So most of you may or may not heard of Grafana, but in very short, it is a visualization tool and it's available in almost all platforms. And it's very easy to use anyway. And only you need is a source of data, and then you can start visualizing your data in various formats like time series, bar charts, or table, etc. And Docker is also very popular. It's also available in every format or platform. It is backed by a very strong community, just like Grafana, a very strong open source community. And it is very important tool for DevOps folks. Those who are in DevOps definitely know, like they have to at least maybe run a Docker command, and it is required. And this is where my talk is about, that what lessons I have learned from the community around in 3 years. And I will share, but first with some basic or easy early mistakes, then slowly go into the Docker Compose issues and setting up advanced features. Please note that I will be doing some local demos. So I will be switching my screen and showing you some command line examples as well. I try to also keep it in a easy way, not get too advanced, but the questions which we will see are most commonly asked and can take time. So Grafana, Docker, common mistakes. So we start with Docker CLI command, like Docker run Grafana. With that, you can quickly run a Grafana container. And common mistakes are like forgetting name or unknown supported platform, or some things like port conflicts. So here is an example of Docker PS command output. So here you see two outputs. So basically the Docker PS command give these two output. You see that there are two containers running, which are running actually both Grafana, but on different port. The first one is on 3002 and the other one is on 3000. The 3000 is the default port. And the funny thing here, which you may notice, is that the last name here is for the name, container name. And you can see the first container name is something very funny, Frosty Capista, something, I don't know. But the second one has a valid name named as Grafana. Now this is very, very basic look like, but this comes very handy. So normally when you do not name your container appropriately, a random name is generated and you can only guess with the image that you are using. And here, since we are using we are running two Grafana containers, it might be that you deploy two because one you need for internal and the other you need for external, but only you know. The other person who may join or log into the SSH terminal may not know about this and can get confused and thought that the first one is the right one or whatever. So to solve this problem, always name your container when using the Docker run command and use the -name parameter. It is a neat option and it can go a long way, which we will see also later. Another example is using the Docker rename command. So the Docker rename command can help if you are already running a container and forgot to name it valid or correctly. So you can use the Docker rename defined as just the container ID and with a valid name. So demo, I think I will see if I can. Yeah, okay, this works. And I have created this small text file because there are so many commands which I also cannot remember. So yeah, just I paste this command like docker run -d and define the port, but then I am defining the name and run Grafana. And if I do docker ps, now you see that it has a valid name. Otherwise, it may have some funky name, which can be confusing. Okay, going back to my slides. Then we see this error time to time, mostly with people who are using Grafana and Docker to monitor their IoT or some specific device. So you have an updated system, you even use some Docker -- name field, but it's still the Docker container is not up and running, or Grafana container is not up and running, and you get some strange errors. You install all sort of library packages and everything, but it does not help. So what is the reason? So it is very important to identify your platform, whether Grafana is supported on your platform or not. And there is a specific Docker command where you type docker run -rm and then give this like m platform /m query and then define the image name. And with that, you can identify the issue. So for demo, let me show you how the output looks like, because it gives you a very detailed output. Yeah. So you see that the output, this gives that this particular Grafana/Grafana latest image is supported on the following platform: on AMD 64, on ARM devices with 64-bit architecture, and ARM v7. And to know that what platform you are using in your environment, whether you are using a virtual environment or maybe somewhere a cloud Linux server, you can type the arch command, okay? And you will see that you are also on x86-64 architecture, which is basically this one. Or you can use the classic uname -m command. and you will see the same output. So this identifies that you are on the right platform. If none of these three are available, then that means that you cannot run Grafana in your environment. So going back to my slides, yeah. And this is where I also mentioned how to use the arch or uname-m command. And I already showed the demo screen. So moving forward. Now, this is about port conflicts, and this can be very easy and quick to resolve, or can be very tricky as well. So here is a screenshot that I'm trying to run Grafana container on the default 3000 port, and I'm getting a port conflict error message that it says the container name Grafana is already in use by some other container or something. Okay. I will move to my terminal and create a scenario. So first I need to remove the old container. Oh, stop. Okay. I clear the screen. Okay. So here what I'm doing is that I have also a Grafana server installed locally on this machine, but it could be some other service like MySQL or some other service which is using port 3000. For demo purpose, I'm just saying that I have a Grafana server installed. And now if I do Docker run, okay, apologies for this. Let me just copy paste the command again to make sure that not miss anything. So now I run the Docker run -d with the name. I get the error. Now, since you already here, you know that I did create I start a server, but the typical problem is that for users is that when they type Docker ps command, they say, nothing is running. So why I am getting a port conflict, or why it says that something is already in use. And this is can take time, but the easy way to resolve it is by using the Linux lsof command. So lsof -p is for translating the port, and then -i is to identify the port 3000. And once we do this, you can see now that something is definitely running on port 3000, and the user is Grafana and the command is Grafana. And this is basically this command, which this service, which we started, is utilizing this port. So what we will do now is that now we know this is how we can track it out. So we will simply stop it. And if we do, okay, yeah, I have to remove the, yeah, now it should be working fine. So now the container is again up and running. So this, I mean, this is also something which users get confused, and it is tricky. It looks easy, but it is tricky to resolve it at the first step, because Docker PS tells you that everything seems fine. There is even no container, but some service might be running and you need to check your Linux environment. Yes, we already saw the solution, and yeah. And we also saw the demo as well. So we are good here. Now, these are some basic early mistakes which I learned from the community. Now we will jump to the more interesting part, which is when using Grafana with Docker Compose. So when you run Grafana with Docker Compose, it's much easier. And I also prefer this option because it gives you more flexibility. So this is a screenshot which I take from internet, but it's a very good example that you have a Docker Compose file. And when you run Docker Compose, you have Docker images, and then it creates the container. Okay, this is a very normal scenario. And for Grafana, when you run Docker Compose, you have a Docker Compose file which create a Docker container network. And you might be running some other services like Prometheus, Loki, so they have their own containers up and running. And then you have some Docker images which are used to create this container, and then there's a volume for the storage. Now, this is a very classic example, and this is a Docker compose.yaml file for Grafana. This is the most minimal YAML for Grafana, which works. So if you run this YAML file, it will work. But this is the most common mistake as well. So what happened is that when you run that script or YAML file, and you even log in and then log out, and you shut down your container correctly, but when you re-log in, all of your data will be lost. And why? Because Grafana does not save anything by default unless you specify it. So solution will be to enable persistent storage. And there are two types. Either you use the volume mount or Docker volume mount, or use the bind mount. So here is a sample script, how the Docker volume mount look like. It is very similar, except that you define a volume path as well. And it could be like some name, like here, Grafana minus storage. And this is the default location var lib Grafana. You should not change this. It is the default. And this is the more preferred way because I also use it. And I think most of the user also use it, this volume mount option. The other option is that if you have some custom images running for Grafana, which you may be interested as a developer or want to put some additional data, you can use bind mount as well. The only difference will be that you have to provide a path to the data and then again path it to the var lib Grafana in the volume section. So as a demo, let's take a look. Okay. So I have this Docker compose.yaml file. Okay. And I'm using the volume mount point option. And if I just do Docker compose up -t, and I go to my web browser. Yeah. Now, if I even create something here, it will be saved and the data will not be lost. So I can just do this and yeah, it will stay there. It should not get lost. Save dashboard. Yeah. Okay. Going back to my slides. Now, we slowly now moving to the advanced part. So changing the default configuration. So this is something also asked a lot. So this is a screenshot of the default configuration file when you install Grafana locally on your Windows or Mac or Linux, and you have a configuration file which looks something like this, and you can enable or disable the values. And the common questions which we got from the community, like where I can find my grafana.ini file when I'm using it with Docker, or or something like I went into the container, created a configuration file for Grafana, but it seems broken or it does not work as it should be. So this happens quite often, and the solution is that you should always use the environment variables in your Docker Compose file to define customized configuration for Grafana. And the sentence looks something like this: Docker for Docker Grafana is like gf underscore a section name and then the key name or the value. So like we have a section auth.basic, and then it says enable is equals to false. This is from the default configuration file. But in the Docker world for Grafana, it will look something like gf, which is fixed, and then auth underscore basic. Basically, we are taking this auth.basic as auth underscore basic, then underscore enable. We define the whole section, and then we define the value, whether we want it true or false. So for demo, again, just looking into the same configuration file, YAML file, we have here defined the environment variables. And basically what I'm trying here is to enable the anonymous login for the user and also give the anonymous user an admin privilege. And I have defined this all inside environment using the GF and defining the section and the value. And that is why when you look at my screen, here, you see that it still says sign in. Even though I am signed, I have already using it. So basically it already works. And this is the correct way to define the configuration file. Okay, going back to my slides. And this is just a reference that these are the default paths when which you should not change when using when trying to run Grafana in a Dockerized environment. So these are fixed, because if you change these paths, then your Grafana probably will not work. Now we come to the provisioning. Provisioning is a very powerful feature, and it can save you a lot of time and effort as well. And the most common questions which we got asked on the community forums are like, can I pre-configure my data sources? Can I load my data source from a configuration file and share it with others? Or something like, can I provision my existing dashboards, which I have created, maybe 5 to 10, and don't need to create it again and again for when I use somewhere else? The answer to all of this is yes. You can do provisioning by creating a configuration file. And how you do that? So basically, you keep the Docker compose.yaml file the same. And in the volume section, you define the path to the provisioning. So here, in your current directory, you created Grafana folder, then provisioning, and then data sources. And then this is the default path, like etc Grafana provisioning data sources. And to show a working demo, I have a tutorial environment, which I will also share with you at the very end, all the links. So here I have a Docker Compose file, and it's running a lot of services. And for Grafana, there is this provisioning of data source as well. So let's take a look at this data source file. So I copy this. So I hope this is the right way. Yeah. And then there is a file data sources.yaml file. So inside the Docker Compose, you don't need to define the YAML file, only path to that YAML file. And if we take a look, we have defined the data sources. The first one is Prometheus, okay, and we define its type, URL, and so on with minimal configuration detail. And there is one more, which is test data. Test data is basically something inside pre-configure and build inside Grafana, but even to use it, you have to set it up and as a data source, and then it works. It does not even work out of the box on first hand, like you have to do some steps. But with provisioning, what will happen is something like this. So you see that all of the services are up and running. And if I go to my browser, I need to refresh because I'm in an old environment. And if I go in connections, data sources, you see that Prometheus and test data are available. If you may not have done the provisioning, then you probably have to do the manual way, is that you go to add a data source and, for example, add Loki for logging, define its URL and the port, and then maybe set some options or not, depends on your configuration, and then click Save Test. And then you will see that, okay, now this is also added. But you have saved this time, and now you can pass this configuration file to your team or to your to others who need this rapid deployment. So this is a good way to use it. Going back to my slides, this is for the Docker Compose part, and now going a bit in advance. So running multiple services. So these are some common mistakes which I would say that can be avoided by particular step-by-step approach, and do not go in advance from the beginning, even though you are a might be experienced user or already know or done this so many times. But step-by-step approach is the right way, in my opinion, and can save you a lot of time. So some tips: always use a valid container name. And now I will show you an working example why container underscore name, the field, is important. So we just saw the example of the provisioning, and you can see that it created a lot of container or run a lot of services. So if I type Docker PS command, here it has names as well. And now you see that since in that particular script, on purpose, the container underscore name command was not defined, or the inside the YAML file, the code was not defined. So it has all auto-generated but very strange name, like doc tutorial environment minus promtail -1 and things like that. And this can be confusing because here we have one service in particular which says this one. So it says Grafana /TNSDB, and then the name, the command is DB. Now, for someone who is new to Grafana, or might be not new, but see, okay, this is something related to a database. And since the image is using, there is a Grafana /TNSDB, so it might be a database for Grafana. But since no real name is defined, so you think like, oh, I definitely need this service. It's very important, but it's not. It's just a test database. So this is where you should use these small best practices to save your time and effort. Now going back to my slides, another is the depends on field. So imagine a use case that you have a lot of applications needed to run on your Docker environment, but maybe your web application is dependent on the database, maybe MySQL or Postgres. So it's better to define this depends on field so that not all of the service try to run at once, but waits for the other. So this can also save your time. So if the database might be down, your application will not be started. And then you can debug, okay, what happened? So only that particular service was not running due to some certain issues. One other tip is to use the limit field. You can limit the resources on your environment, such as CPU and memory. And here is an example screenshot that you have some service. It can be anything, not just Grafana. And then you define the deploy section, and here are resources section. And in resources, you can define what limits you will like to put and what reservation you would like to have. So this is a good way to limit how much resources an application should be using. Now, another good command is the Docker stats command. This command exists for a very long time, and I must say that even sometime I also forgot the importance of it, but it gives you real-time output about the resource usage. So we have already a container environment up and running. So let me clear my terminal screen and just type Docker stats. And you see that this is a real-time output to all the resources that are being used. You can see the CPU usage, memory usage, and I think it gives you also the process IDs as well, which can be very helpful in a complex environment to debug. And last but not least also is, not last, there is one more, the env file. So another best practice which we see in the community is that when we ask for user to share their Docker file, they give us everything, even sometimes their database password. So better to use environment file where you can define variables and secrets and just replace with a value rather than giving us everything and we don't want to take the ownership of your database credentials. Network driver. This is definitely very interesting one. So the default Docker driver is Bridge and it works smoothly. And what some cases which I also struggle is that when a user says that I have this Docker compose not able to work with Grafana, and when I look at the compose file, it has a lot of sections like some custom network driver name, then they are using the one which are defined by Docker. And there are many. So the best practice is to first try to check that your Docker compose works with the default driver. If that not works, then you know already that how to fix somewhere a typo issue in your compose file. And then read the documentation from the Docker website when to use what network driver, because every network driver is different. Plugins. Grafana has 3 categories of plugins: data sources, panels, and apps. And you can use all of them if you like. Some are free, some are community, and there are some enterprise as well. And you can install plugins as you like on the fly without taking too much time and effort. Otherwise, you have to install this manually. And it is not idle if you are maybe have 3 to 5 plugins usage and you have to configure them again and again. So you can use Grafana in a Dockerized environment and install this plugin on the fly. And it also supports custom plugins usage as well. So here's a screenshot that which use the compose file, and in the environment section, you can see this gf_plugins_ pre-install variable. And basically here we say that install the Kafka data source and also a Grafana clock panel. By naming these data source exactly, you can install this plugin on hand without going in a manual step. And you can check these, the name of these data sources in the developer documentation created by that user. And 99%, I'm sure, all of our plugins are able to be, can be installed via Docker Compose. I'm skipping the demo because it will take a little bit additional time, and I have one important slide to cover. Similar for the custom plugin, if you have some custom plugin which you want to use, because custom plugin means that it is not publicly visible in your outside your organization because you want to keep it secret or for data privacy, you can install the same way, same variable, but use the custom plugin with 2 @. That's how it is. And then define the path to the zip file. So it could be your GitHub, at your GitHub location, and just point to the zip file. And you can read more about custom plugin also in the documentation, how to create a custom plugin. But again, inside Docker environment, it is also doable. Similar with custom images, you can use custom images. We provide images for developers and testers. If you want to, so the default is the Alpine image, which is very lightweight and recommended. But if you want to run Docker Ubuntu version to get more libraries and services, you can do that by using the Grafana/Grafana OSS, specify maybe a version, and then -Ubuntu. So that's the way. And also, if you are more interested to try some new features which are not yet released, those are available in Grafana/Grafana-dev images, which you can try out before the release and have some fun. Troubleshooting. Troubleshooting is a very important part. So there are 2 ways I can recommend which can be helpful in troubleshooting the issues. First is checking the logs, and other is using Loki. So checking the logs is like using Docker. It says Docker -compose. That's the old way. It's a typo mistake. So you can just say Docker --compose logs --follow. And it will give you I think, compose logs --follow. Yeah, it will give you like a similar output like a tail -f, except that it will give you the compose file output. So this is very useful if you want to debug issues. And you can see it's updating on its own as follows. And you can enable debug log level as well, which can help you in further debugging. So all you need to do in your compose file is that inside the environment section, just define this variable gf_log_level is equals to debug. And you can see that some of these output are debug anyway. Yeah, you can see the level is debug because by default, the Grafana log level is info mode. But debug is good to see what kind of error is happening or why you can't connect to a data source. You can get more into it. Just showcase the demo, so it's fine. Moving forward. And yeah, one more solution is using Loki. So Loki is a logging tool created by Grafana Labs. It's also open source. You can use Loki with anything like Fluentd or some other as well. We use Promptail and Alloy. And I want to showcase how the Loki output looks like very quickly. So here we have Grafana Play, and I think Loki demo. So this dashboard, this dashboard is all created from Loki, and this is how you can visualize the logs. And you can see that it is very helpful. It's just not written in text format. You can have more viewable and visible data. For example, who is logging from what, how many kind of HTTP status codes error are generated, and so on. And then you can create as more detail as possible. Even you can use, if you are using some custom IP blocking or IP tracking implementation, you can track by countries who is the most logged in user from where by location and so on. So Loki is definitely an advanced way, but very easy way to visualize logs rather than command line. Yeah, and Loki is targeted for all kind of folks like who are in DevOps, SRE, or data engineers. Yeah, we just saw the demo, so it's fine. We can skip this. So this is my end for my talk, which I tried to explain some of the basic to advanced use cases or best practices when using Grafana in a Dockerized environment. And my takeaways will be that easy to get started for both Grafana and Docker. Both have a very strong community support, and you can deploy at scale, especially for DevOps folks. Like you want to save time, you don't want to do all things manually. So they are way like provisioning or, for example, checking the logs quickly by enable debug log level. And there are more advanced example as well, which I shared like some as tips. And yeah, I think, yeah, that's important for DevOps. So I said it a bit quickly. Yeah. If you want to get involved, we will love that. We have already many users who are learning and using Grafana, either with Docker or Kubernetes or just plain Linux or Windows Grafana users as well. And this is links to our official repository. And you can use also Slack for live chat and community forum to get more involved. I prefer more community forum because it's a knowledge base platform to share and learn a lot. And thank you very much for participating. If you scan this QR code here or here, you can get link to all of the documentation links and even to the GitHub repo where you can see how the whole Grafana, Loki, and Prometheus stack is working all together. And I also put two additional videos if someone wants to learn more about Grafana and Docker as well. So yes, that's all from my side, and happy to take any questions if we have some time. Please.
Thank you for your sharing. And I have a question because Grafana can integrate with lots of data source. So we have lots of dashboard on Grafana and the engineer can see. Do you have any suggestion to engineer how to manage the dashboard to help them to or support them to debug and view the metrics and view the logs in Grafana? Any suggestion to manage that so many dashboard?
Okay, so if I understand the question, is like you have many dashboards?
Yes, because there's lots of data source we can integrate.
And you want to manage it. One question from my side: are these dashboards internal or are public?
It might be public or
might be public. Okay, so we have a dashboard marketplace which is called Grafana Dashboard. So grafana.com/dashboards, and here many open source community users or just someone who is interested can upload a dashboard here, and it could be any kind of dashboard. So that's one way to have a dashboard publicly. If you have some dashboard which you want to keep private, which are organizational based, you can use provisioning as well for dashboard. I show the example for the data source, but you can use provisioning for dashboard as well. And since every dashboard you want to keep the dashboard same, there is a feature in Grafana which is called creating a library panel. The library panel allows you that you have created a dashboard, and if you are sharing a Grafana account with others and you want them to use your dashboard or someone else's dashboard, you can create a library panel and they can use that particular dashboard, because dashboard uses a data source like Prometheus, MySQL, GitHub, and creating a panel, library panel of it is the best way to be used by everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Okay, then thank you everyone for your time and attending this session.
Thank you very much. The next program will start from 3 p.m. Thank you.